Clara stood at the trailhead, her backpack heavy against her shoulders. The rugged peaks of the mountain range loomed before her, majestic and intimidating. She took a deep breath, feeling the crisp mountain air fill her lungs. This solo hiking trip was exactly what she needed, a chance to escape the pain of her recent loss and reconnect with the healing power of nature. With a determined stride, Clara set off into the dense forest. Dappled sunlight filtered through the canopy of leaves overhead as she followed the winding trail deeper into the wilderness. Birds chirped unseen in the branches, and the earthy smell of soil and pine needles enveloped her. For the first few miles, Clara reveled in the peacefulness of her surroundings. Out here, far from the noise and bustle of civilization, her troubles felt distant, softened by the timeless beauty of the untamed landscape. She welcomed the burn in her legs as the trail climbed higher, a physical manifestation of the emotional burdens she carried. As the sun arced across the sky, Clara trekked onward, losing herself in the steady rhythm of her footsteps and the rush of a nearby stream tumbling over mossy boulders. In this vast wilderness, she felt small yet somehow significant, a tiny speck against the backdrop of nature's grandeur. But as the shadows lengthened and the air cooled, a flicker of unease stirred in Clara's chest. She paused, consulting her map and compass, a frown creasing her brow. The trail had grown fainter, the landmarks harder to discern. Uncertainty coiled in her gut as she scanned the unfamiliar terrain. With a sinking realization, Clara understood the truth she had been trying to deny. Somewhere in the vastness of the forest, she had strayed off course. She was lost, alone, and utterly unprepared for the challenges that lay ahead. Night fell swiftly in the mountains, cloaking the forest in impenetrable darkness. Clara huddled against the trunk of a towering pine tree, shivering as the temperature dropped. She had managed to gather a meager pile of twigs and leaves, but her attempts to start a fire had been futile. The damp would refuse to catch, and her numb fingers fumbled with the matches. Exhaustion tugged at her eyelids, but fear kept her awake, her senses hyper-alert to every rustle and snap in the underbrush. In the distance, an owl hooted, its eerie call echoing through the night. Clara drew her knees to her chest, trying to conserve warmth. She thought of her family, picturing their worried faces when she failed to return as planned. Hot tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Breaking down now wouldn't help her situation. She needed to stay strong, to find a way out of this mess. As the long hours of the night stretched on, Clara's thoughts turned to the events that had driven her to seek solace in the wilderness. The sudden loss of her fiancé, the suffocating grief that had consumed her in the aftermath. She had hoped this trip would provide a respite, a chance to heal. Instead, it had only plunged her into a new kind of nightmare. Somewhere in the darkness, a twig snapped loudly, startling Clara from her troubled thoughts. She froze, her heart pounding against her ribcage. Something large was moving through the underbrush, drawing closer with each heavy footfall. Clara held her breath, terror coursing through her veins as a massive shape emerged from the shadows. In the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy, she caught a glimpse of shaggy fur and powerful shoulders. A bear. The bear lumbered into the small clearing, its dark eyes glinting in the moonlight. Clara remained motionless, hardly daring to breathe as the creature swung its huge head from side to side, sniffing the air. Slowly, the bear's gaze settled on her, and Clara's heart seized with fear. She knew the protocol for bear encounters. Make yourself big, make noise, don't run. But in that moment, all rational thought fled her mind. She was frozen, paralyzed by the primal terror of being face to face with a predator. But as the seconds ticked by and the bear made no move to charge, something shifted in Clara's perception. There was an intelligence in the animal's eyes, a depth of understanding that went beyond mere instinct. It regarded her with a calm curiosity, as if sensing her fear and deciding not to act upon it. Clara swallowed hard, trying to steady her racing pulse. Cautiously, she raised one trembling hand, palm outward in a gesture of peace. I don't mean any harm, she whispered, her voice barely audible even to her own ears. To her shock, The bear huffed softly, almost as if in response. It took a step closer, and Clara tensed, ready to bolt. But the bear simply lowered its massive head and began to snuffle at the ground, foraging for roots or grubs. Clara watched in amazement as the bear went about its business, seemingly unperturbed by her presence. Gradually, the knot of fear in her chest began to loosen, replaced by a tentative sense of wonder. She had heard tales of the mountain's guardian spirit, a mythical creature said to protect the ancient secrets of the land. Could this bear, with its uncanny intelligence and peaceful demeanor, be a manifestation of that legend? As the night wore on and the bear continued its quiet foraging, Clara found herself drifting into an exhausted sleep, lulled by the soft rustling of the creature's movements. For the first time since she had set foot in the wilderness, she felt a flicker of hope amid the darkness. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and gold. Clara blinked awake, her body stiff and sore from a night spent huddled against the tree trunk. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she had gotten there. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back: the hike, getting lost, the encounter with the bear. Clara sat up abruptly, scanning the clearing for any sign of the creature. But the bear was gone, vanished into the forest as mysteriously as it had appeared. Clara struggled to her feet, wincing at the ache in her muscles. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since the previous afternoon. She rummaged through her backpack, finding only a handful of energy bars and a half-empty water bottle. Rationing her meager supplies, Clara set off through the forest, determined to find her way back to the trail. But as the hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky, her sense of direction only grew more muddled. The trees seemed to press in on her from all sides, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. Thirst clawed at her throat, and hunger gnawed at her belly. Clara's steps grew slower, more unsteady. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision, and a wave of dizziness threatened to overwhelm her. Just as she was about to collapse, a familiar figure emerged from the undergrowth. The bear, its shaggy coat gleaming in the dappled sunlight, regarded her with those calm, intelligent eyes. Clara's breath caught in her throat as the bear turned and began to lumber away, glancing back at her over its shoulder as if in invitation. Against all logic, she found herself following, stumbling after the creature on weakened legs. The bear led her through the forest, seeming to choose a path with purpose. It brought her to a clear, burbling stream, where Clara fell to her knees and drank deeply, the cold water soothing her parched throat. As she rested by the stream, the bear foraged nearby, unearthing roots and berries that it laid at her feet. Clara hesitated only a moment before hunger won out over caution. She ate ravenously, marveling at the bear's apparent understanding of her needs. In that moment, as the bear watched over her with a protective gaze, Clara knew that her survival depended on this extraordinary creature. Together, they would face the challenges of the wilderness, forging an unlikely bond between human and beast. Days turned into weeks as Clara and the bear navigated the rugged terrain of the mountains. The creature became her constant companion, guiding her to sources of food and water, standing guard as she slept, and even providing warmth on the coldest nights. Clara marveled at the bear's intelligence, the way it seemed to anticipate her needs and communicate without words. She began to see the animal not as a simple beast, but as a sentient being with its own thoughts and emotions. As they trekked through the wilderness, Clara found herself talking to the bear, sharing her hopes and fears, her grief over her lost love. The creature listened with a patient, understanding gaze, offering a silent comfort that soothed her aching heart. But the mountains held many dangers, and even with the bear's protection, Clara faced daily challenges. Treacherous ravines, sudden storms, and predators lurking in the shadows tested her resolve and pushed her to the limits of her endurance. One particularly harrowing encounter left Clara shaken to her core. They had stumbled upon a den of mountain lions, the fierce felines hissing and snarling as they surrounded the intruders in their territory. Clara's heart pounded as she faced the deadly predators, certain that her end had come. But the bear stepped forward, placing itself between her and the circling cats. It reared up to its full height, bellowing a thunderous roar that echoed through the mountains. To Clara's amazement, the mountain lions backed down, slinking away into the underbrush with tails tucked between their legs. The bear had asserted its dominance, protecting her with a display of raw power and courage. In that moment, Clara understood the true nature of the creature that had become her guardian. The bear was more than a mere animal. It was a force of nature, a manifestation of the wild spirit that thrummed through the very heart of the mountain. As they journeyed on, Clara began to draw strength from the bear's presence, finding within herself a resilience she had never known she possessed. Together, they would face whatever challenges the wilderness threw their way, united by a bond that transcended the boundaries between species. As the weeks stretched into months, Clara and the bear fell into a rhythm of survival, their lives intertwined in a dance of mutual dependency. They foraged for food together, the bear using its keen senses to locate hidden caches of berries and roots, while Clara gathered kindling and tended to the nightly fires. But even as they grew closer, Clara couldn't shake the nagging sense of guilt that plagued her. She knew her family must be worried sick, searching for her tirelessly. The thought of their anguish weighed heavily on her heart. One evening, as they sat by the crackling fire, Clara turned to the bear with tears in her eyes. "I have to find a way back," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "I can't keep running forever." The bear regarded her with a solemn gaze, as if understanding the depth of her turmoil. It huffed softly, nudging her hand with its massive snout in a gesture of comfort. Clara drew in a shaky breath, steeling herself for the difficult path ahead. She knew that finding her way back to civilization would be no easy feat. The mountains were vast and unforgiving, and she had long since lost any sense of direction. But with the bear by her side, she felt a flicker of hope. Together, they would navigate the wilderness, searching for signs of human presence, for a trail that might lead them back to the world she had left behind. As they set out on their new quest, Clara couldn't help but marvel at the bond she had formed with the bear. In the creature's steady presence, she found a strength she had never known she possessed, a resilience born of adversity and nurtured by the wild. Through long days of trekking and cold nights huddled together for warmth, Clara and the bear pushed onward, driven by a shared determination to find their way home. And though the path was fraught with danger and uncertainty, they faced each challenge as one, united by a friendship that defied the boundaries of nature. The mountains seemed to stretch on endlessly, an unbroken expanse of rugged peaks and deep valleys. Clara and the bear had been searching for signs of civilization for weeks, but with each passing day, their hope of finding a way back dwindled. Exhaustion weighed heavily on Clara's shoulders, and the constant gnawing of hunger in her belly sapped her strength. Even the bear, with its seemingly inexhaustible reserves of energy, had begun to show signs of strain. One particularly grueling day, as they clambered up a steep, rocky slope, Clara's foot slipped on a loose stone. She cried out as she tumbled backward, her body bouncing and rolling down the incline. The bear let out a roar of alarm, lunging after her with surprising speed. It caught up to her just as she was about to plummet over the edge of a sheer cliff, its powerful jaws clamping down on the back of her jacket. Clara dangled over the precipice, her heart pounding in her throat as she stared down at the dizzying drop below. The bear braced itself against the rocks, its muscles straining as it held her aloft. With a mighty heave, the creature hauled her back from the brink, dragging her to safety on the narrow ledge. Clara collapsed against the bear's shaggy flank, trembling with shock and relief. "Thank you," she whispered, burying her face in the bear's thick fur. "You saved my life." The bear rumbled softly, nuzzling her hair with its snout. In that moment, Clara understood the depth of the bond they shared. The bear was more than just her protector. It was her friend, her family in this wild and unforgiving place. As they rested on the ledge, catching their breath and gathering their strength, Clara couldn't help but wonder at the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. She had come to the mountains seeking solace, hoping to escape the pain of her loss. Instead, she had found something she had never expected, a connection that transcended the boundaries of species, a love that burned bright against the darkness of the wild. With renewed determination, Clara and the bear pressed on, their spirits buoyed by the unshakable bond that had grown between them. Together, they would find a way back to the world of humans, no matter how long it took or how hard the journey might be. As the days turned into weeks, Clara and the bear's search for a way back to civilization began to feel increasingly futile. The mountains seemed to go on forever, an endless expanse of rugged peaks and deep valleys that offered no sign of human presence. But even as their hope of finding a path home dwindled, something else began to take root in Clara's heart. A growing sense of connection to the wild, a deep appreciation for the untamed beauty of the land. With each passing day, she found herself marveling at the resilience of the creatures that called these mountains home. She watched eagles soar on thermals high above, their wings silhouetted against the sky. She listened to the haunting cries of wolves echoing through the night, a primal song that stirred something ancient and untamed within her soul. And always, there was the bear, her constant companion, her guardian and friend. In the creature's steady presence, Clara found a sense of belonging she had never known before, a feeling of being utterly at home in the wild. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Clara turned to the bear with a pensive expression. "Maybe this is where I'm meant to be," she murmured, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Maybe the mountains are my home now." The bear regarded her with a knowing gaze, its dark eyes glinting in the firelight. It huffed softly as if in agreement. Clara reached out and ran her fingers through the bear's shaggy fur, feeling the warmth of its body beneath her palm. In that moment, she understood that the bond they shared went beyond mere survival. It was a connection that transcended the boundaries of species, a love that burned bright against the darkness of the wild. As they settled in for the night, Clara couldn't help but wonder at the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. She had come to the mountains seeking solace, hoping to escape the pain of her loss. Instead, she had found something she had never expected, a sense of belonging, a purpose that went beyond the trappings of human society. With a contented sigh, Clara nestled against the bear's side, feeling the rise and fall of its breath beneath her cheek. Whatever the future might hold, she knew that she would face it with the strength and courage she had found in the wild, with the unshakable bond she had forged with the creature that had become her family. As the seasons changed and the mountains shed their summer green for the fiery hues of autumn, Clara and the bear's bond only grew stronger. They had become a unit, working together seamlessly to navigate the challenges of the wild. But even as they reveled in their newfound sense of belonging, Clara couldn't shake the nagging sense that something was missing. She had grown accustomed to the rhythms of the wilderness, but there were still moments when she longed for the comforts of home, for the warmth of human connection. One crisp morning, as they were foraging for berries along a rocky hillside, Clara heard a sound that. The bear led Clara through a narrow ravine, its walls rising up on either side like sentinels of stone. The air grew colder as they descended deeper into the earth, and Clara shivered, pulling her tattered jacket tighter around her shoulders. At the end of the ravine, they emerged into a hidden valley, a place of such breathtaking beauty that Clara's heart skipped a beat. A crystal-clear stream wound through a meadow of wildflowers, their delicate petals dancing in the breeze. Towering trees lined the edges of the valley, their branches reaching up to embrace the sky. But it was the structure at the center of the valley that caught Clara's eye. A small cabin, its weathered logs gleaming in the sunlight. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the scent of wood smoke and cooking food drifted on the air. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the cabin, hardly daring to believe what she was seeing. It was a sign of human presence, a beacon of hope in the vast wilderness. The bear huffed softly, nudging Clara forward with its snout. She stumbled ahead, her heart pounding as she approached the cabin. With trembling hands, she raised her fist and knocked on the rough-hewn door. For a long moment, there was silence. Then the door creaked open, and a weathered face peered out. An old man, his eyes bright and keen beneath bushy brows. "Well now," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "What have we here?" Clara opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Tears welled up in her eyes as the weight of all she had been through came crashing down upon her. The old man's gaze softened, and he stepped aside, gesturing for her to enter. "Come on in, child," he said. "You look like you could use a hot meal and a warm bed." As Clara crossed the threshold into the cabin, the bear lingered outside, watching her with a solemn gaze. In that moment, she understood the true nature of the bond they shared. A connection that went beyond mere survival, a love that transcended the boundaries of the wild. With a grateful smile, Clara turned to the bear and whispered, "Thank you, my friend, for everything." The bear huffed softly, its eyes glinting with an almost human understanding. Then it turned and lumbered away, vanishing into the wilderness from whence it had come. The old man's name was Gus, and he welcomed Clara into his home with open arms. Over a hearty meal of venison stew and fresh-baked bread, she poured out her story, telling him of her ill-fated hike, her struggle to survive in the wilderness, and the extraordinary bond she had forged with the bear. Gus listened intently, his eyes gleaming with a mix of wonder and understanding. When Clara had finished, he leaned back in his chair and regarded her with a thoughtful expression. "You've been through quite an ordeal, child," he said, his voice gentle. "But it seems to me that you've also been given a rare gift, a chance to see the world through different eyes, to understand the true nature of the wild." Clara nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "I never knew how much I needed this," she whispered. "How much I needed to find myself out there, in the mountains." Gus smiled, his weathered face creasing with warmth. "The wilderness has a way of stripping away all the noise and clutter of the human world," he said. "It shows us what really matters, what we're truly made of." In the days that followed, Clara began to heal, both physically and emotionally. Gus taught her the ways of the mountain, showing her how to forage for food, how to read the signs of the weather, how to find her way by the stars. And always, there was the bear, a constant presence at the edge of the valley, watching over her with a protective gaze. Clara knew that their bond was unbreakable, that no matter where life might take her, the bear would always be a part of her. As the weeks turned into months, Clara began to feel a stirring in her heart, a call to return to the world she had left behind. She knew that her family must be worried sick, that they deserved to know she was alive and well. But even as she prepared to leave the valley, to make the long journey back to civilization, Clara knew that a part of her would always belong to the wild. The mountains had changed her, had shown her a strength and resilience she had never known she possessed. With tears in her eyes, she hugged Gus goodbye, promising to return someday, to share with him the new life she would build. Then she set out into the wilderness once more, the bear by her side, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. The journey back to civilization was long and arduous, a test of both physical and emotional endurance. Clara and the bear trekked through rugged terrain, braving treacherous ravines and icy mountain passes, always pushing forward, always keeping their eyes on the distant horizon. As they walked, Clara found herself talking to the bear, sharing her hopes and fears, her dreams for the future. She told the creature of her family, of the life she had left behind, of the love she hoped to find again. And always, the bear listened with a patient, understanding gaze, offering a silent comfort that soothed her weary soul. Finally, after weeks of travel, they emerged from the wilderness, stepping out onto a winding mountain road. Clara's heart leapt in her chest as she saw the first signs of human presence. A battered road sign, a distant curl of smoke rising from a chimney. She turned to the bear, her eyes brimming with tears. "We made it," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "We're almost home." The bear huffed softly, nuzzling her hand with its snout. In that moment, Clara understood the true depth of their bond, the unbreakable connection they had forged in the crucible of the wild. As they walked down the road, Clara's thoughts turned to the future, to the life she would build in the world of humans. She knew that things would never be the same, that the mountains had changed her in ways she could never fully explain. But she also knew that the bear would always be a part of her, a reminder of the strength and resilience she had found within herself. No matter where life might take her, she would carry the lessons of the wild in her heart, a guiding light in the darkness. And so, with the bear by her side, Clara stepped out into the world once more, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring, secure in the knowledge that she was never truly alone. When Clara finally reached her village, she was met with a mixture of shock, joy, and disbelief. Her family embraced her with tears of relief, marveling at the woman she had become, at the quiet strength that emanated from her like a beacon. But even as she settled back into the rhythms of human life, Clara found herself longing for the wild, for the vast, untamed beauty of the mountains. She would often slip away in the early morning hours, hiking up to a nearby ridge where she could watch the sun rise over the distant peaks. And always the bear was there, a silent presence at the edge of the village, watching over her with a protective gaze. The villagers regarded the creature with a mix of fear and awe, whispers of the mountain's guardian spirit spreading like wildfire. But Clara understood the truth behind the legend, the deep bond that had grown between her and the bear. She knew that the creature was more than just a protector. It was a symbol of the untamed spirit that lived within her, a reminder of the courage and resilience she had found in the face of adversity. As the months passed, Clara began to share her story with others, speaking of the transformative power of the wild, of the lessons she had learned in the mountains. She became a voice for conservation, working tirelessly to protect the wilderness that had given her so much. And through it all, the bear remained a constant presence in her life, a reminder of the unbreakable bond they shared. Clara knew that no matter where her path might lead, the bear would always be a part of her, a guiding light in the darkness. In the end, Clara's story became a legend in its own right, a tale of hope and resilience, of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of challenges. And always at the heart of the legend was the bear, the guardian of the mountain, the symbol of the wild that lived within us all. Years passed, and Clara's legend grew, spreading far beyond the borders of her village. People came from all over to hear her speak, to learn from her wisdom, to be inspired by her courage and resilience. And always the bear was there, a silent presence at the edge of the crowds, watching over her with a protective gaze. Clara knew that their bond was unbreakable, that no matter how much time passed, the bear would always be a part of her. As she grew older, Clara began to pass on her knowledge to a new generation, teaching them the ways of the wild, the lessons she had learned in the mountains. She spoke of the importance of conservation, of the need to protect the wilderness that sustained us all. And through it all, the bear remained a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder of the power of the human spirit to overcome even the greatest of challenges. One crisp autumn morning, as the leaves blazed with color and the air hummed with the promise of change, Clara set out into the mountains once more. She walked with a purpose, her steps sure and steady, the bear by her side. They climbed higher and higher, leaving the world of humans behind, until they reached a hidden valley, a place of such breathtaking beauty that it stole the breath from Clara's lungs. There, in the heart of the wilderness, Clara knelt before the bear, her eyes brimming with tears of gratitude and love. She knew that her time in the mountains was drawing to a close, that she must soon return to the world of humans once more. But she also knew that the bear would always be with her, a guiding light in the darkness, a reminder of the wild spirit that lived within her heart. With a final embrace, Clara turned and walked away, leaving the bear to watch over the valley, to guard the secrets of the mountain for generations to come. And though she knew that she would never forget the lessons she had learned, the bond she had forged, Clara also knew that the bear's legacy would live on, a symbol of hope and resilience, a reminder of the power of the wild to transform us all. As Clara walked away from the hidden valley, her heart was filled with a bittersweet mixture of emotions. She knew that her time in the mountains had changed her forever, that the lessons she had learned and the bond she had forged with the bear would always be a part of her. With each step, memories of her journey flooded her mind. She remembered the terror of being lost, the desperation of trying to survive in the unforgiving wilderness. But she also remembered the moments of beauty and wonder, the times when the bear had shown her the true majesty of the wild. As she hiked down the mountain trail, Clara couldn't help but reflect on the profound impact the bear had had on her life. It had been more than just a protector, more than just a guide. The bear had been a teacher, a friend, a symbol of the resilience and strength that lived within her own heart. Clara knew that she would never be able to fully explain the depth of their connection, the way the bear had understood her thoughts and feelings without the need for words. It was a bond that transcended the boundaries of species, a love that burned bright against the darkness of the world. As she emerged from the forest and caught sight of her village in the distance, Clara felt a pang of sadness. She knew that her time in the mountains was over, that she must return to the world of humans and take up the mantle of leadership once more. But even as she walked through the streets of her village, greeted by the smiles and embraces of her loved ones, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her would always belong to the wild. In the days and weeks that followed, Clara threw herself into her work, using her newfound wisdom and strength to guide her people towards a better future. She taught them the importance of living in harmony with the natural world, of respecting the delicate balance that sustained them all. And always, the bear was there, a constant presence in her dreams, a reminder of the unbreakable bond they shared. Clara knew that no matter how much time passed, no matter how far she traveled, the bear would always be with her, a guiding light in the darkness. As the years went by, Clara's legend only grew. People came from far and wide to seek her counsel, to learn from her wisdom, to be inspired by her courage and compassion. And though she never sought fame or glory for herself, Clara couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in the impact she had had on the world. But even as she basked in the warmth of her people's love and respect, Clara never forgot the true source of her strength. She knew that it was the bear who had taught her the most important lessons of all: the power of resilience, the importance of living in harmony with the wild, the unbreakable bonds of love and friendship. And so, as she grew old and gray, Clara made one final journey into the mountains. She hiked to the hidden valley where she had first met the bear, the place where their bond had been forged in the crucible of the wild. There, in the heart of the wilderness, Clara closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. She could feel the bear's presence all around her, a warm and comforting embrace that soothed her weary soul. And as she took her last breath, Clara knew that she was not alone. The bear was with her, now and always, a guiding light in the darkness, a symbol of the wild spirit that lived on forever in the hearts of all who dared to dream. Though Clara's passing was mourned by all who knew her, her legacy lived on. The village became a beacon of hope and resilience, a testament to the power of one woman's courage and compassion. And always, at the center of it all, was the legend of the bear, the guardian of the mountain, the symbol of the unbreakable bond between humans and the wild. For generations to come, the story of Clara and the bear would be told and retold, a reminder of the strength and beauty that lived within us all. And though the world might change and shift around them, the mountain and the bear would endure, eternal guardians of the wild, forever watching over the dreams and hopes of humankind. End of story.